Tantra Illuminated with Dr. Christopher Wallace is a journey through the depths of the human experience, as viewed through the lens of the tradition called non-dual Shaiva Tantra. This multi-format podcast delves into the fascinating world of classical Tantra and its intersections with philosophy, neuroscience, psychology, human development, and the broader world of spirituality. This episode is a scriptural reading, and I'll be sharing with you my translation of Chapter 4 of the Tantrasāra, the essence of Tantra, by the great master Abhinavagupta. All the words that follow are directly translated from the original Sanskrit, with extremely minor clarifications added here and there by myself. The fourth day. This is the discussion of the empowered means, śākta-upāya. When a person chooses to gradually refine and purify his understanding of reality in order to enter into an experiential realization of his true nature, as described above, she or he employs a process of contemplation, bhavana krama, that presupposes sound reasoning and discernment, sat-tarka, access to authentic tradition, sad-āgama, and instruction by a teacher of reality, sad-guru. So this process of contemplation that leads to experiential realization presupposes sound reasoning and discernment, access to authentic tradition, and instruction by a teacher of reality, a true teacher. To explain, due solely to the power of conceptualization, living beings imagine themselves bound. And this very egoic conception is the cause of the repeated bondage that is the cycle of suffering, samsara. Thus, when a thought form that opposes that egoic conception has arisen and become stabilized, it crushes the thought form that is the cause of samsara, and thereby indirectly causes success in one's practice. That is, it brings about liberation. And that liberating thought form has such a nature. The one and only ultimate reality is pure, unlimited awareness, transcending all the principles that are by nature limited, up to and including Shiva. That is the ground upon which all things are established. That is the life force of the universe. By that, the universe lives and breathes, and that alone am I. Thus, what I am is one with everything, and yet transcends everything. This understanding of the nature of reality, does not arise amongst those blinded by Maya, because they lack sound reasoning and discernment, authoritative scriptures, and/or a teacher of reality. Sat-tarka, sad-āgama, and Sadguru. For example, those Vaishnavas and others who are limited by their tradition to the principle of attachment, raga tattva, do not turn towards the higher view, as it is said in the Parameshwara Tantra. All these Vaishnavas and others who are stained by limited insight and attachment do not discover the highest reality, being deprived of the wisdom of the omniscient one. By contrast, anyone who is pierced by a descent of power from the divine that becomes stable, and who are thus able to refine and purify their conceptual understanding through authoritative tradition and instruction by a teacher of reality, enter their own ultimate nature. An objection might arise here. In that case, would not the highest reality be reducible to a mere concept? Not at all, because the beneficial conceptual understanding exemplified above in the passage beginning, "The one and only ultimate reality is pure, unlimited awareness," is effective merely in dispelling the scent of duality, and once it has accomplished that, it dissolves. But the highest reality is already self-manifest everywhere as everything, and self-manifest in its entirety in everything. Thus, conceptual understanding can neither help it manifest nor undermine it in any way. Among those who have received the descent of power, śākta-upāya, sound reasoning and discernment arises spontaneously. For one who has been pierced by a very strong descent of power, for such a one is said to be naturally perfected by the spontaneous unfolding process. Such a one needs no formal initiation, for she or he is said to be initiated by the goddesses of their own awareness. For another person, lacking the discernment arising from the intense descent of power, it is achieved through contemplating the scriptures and traditional teachings, the agamas. This and more will be discussed in detail in the 11th day, that is, chapter 11, Illumination of the Descent of Power. Now, the function of a teacher is to explain the scriptures and traditional teachings. And the function of those teachings is to give rise to the kind of conceptual understanding that can serve as a foundation for the continuous unfolding of unimpeded and unswerving insight. It is just such a continuity of conceptual understandings of this kind that we define as sound reasoning and discernment, sat-tarka. And it is precisely this that is also called contemplation, bhavana. For through it, something that actually exists but appears not to because it is imperceptible is realized by making it perceptible. In our way, none of the aids to yoga, also known as the limbs of yoga, is a direct means to liberation, apart from this sound reasoning and discernment that manifests pure wisdom. The class of yamas beginning with nonviolence, the class of niyamas beginning with discipline, tapas, the class of breath extension exercises, pranayama, beginning with deep inhalation, and so on. Since all these aids to yoga relate only to specific objects of consciousness, what could be the possible use of them with regard to consciousness itself? Even sense concentration, meditation, and absorption, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, being accomplished in the successive stages of practice, merely confer on the meditator the state of identity with the object of meditation. Practice, abhyasa, cannot possibly be effective with regard to the supreme reality that is one's divine essence nature. For practice is taking a possibility arising in consciousness and fixing it within the prana, mind, or body, such as the practices of weightlifting, comprehending the subject matter of any particular branch of learning, or dancing, respectively. But in consciousness itself, there is nothing that could be added to it, nor removed from it. How then could there be any point to practice as ordinarily construed? If it be objected, what then is the point of reasoning? Discernment, how could that bring about the attainment of the goal? It has already been stated here that it is only a way of removing the scent of duality and nothing more. Or rather, even in worldly life, what practice really means is that any given aspect of oneself, the body, mind, etc., manifests in a desired form and suppresses other possible forms. For the true nature of all such aspects is awareness, and thus they can take on any form. But in the case of ultimate reality, there is nothing that can be removed or need be removed, as I have said. Even the scent of duality itself is not a distinct actual entity, but rather is merely the lack of insight concerning one's own nature. Thus, when it is said that the removal of duality is accomplished through conceptual understanding, this is what is really meant. One's ultimately real nature, illuminating itself, gradually forsaking its condition of ignorance, which it freely took on of its own accord, shines forth in these three stages: turning towards expansion, then expanding, then expanded. turning towards opening, then opening, then opened. It is simply the nature of the highest divinity to reveal itself in this way. Therefore, none of the limbs of yoga are a direct means to the goal, though they may support discernment. Accurate discernment alone is a direct means to the goal. The nature of true worship, observance, and practice. Accurate discernment alone is a direct means to that. It alone is pure wisdom, and it is refined in many ways, such as worship, fire offerings, mantra repetition, disciplined observance, and yoga. Yaga, homa, japa, vrata, and yoga. Worship on this śākta-upāya level is offering everything into the highest divinity in order to attain the firm understanding that everything exists within the highest divinity alone, and there is nothing other than that. Those things that tend to spontaneously dissolve into blissful awareness are easy to offer to God because they are delightful. For this reason, we are taught in Scripture to use in external practice those things which delight the aesthetic senses that converge in the heart, such as flowers, scented pastes, refreshments such as wine and meat, and so on. Homa. All existent beings, things, and states consist of the effulgent energy of the highest divinity. It is to attain a firm and stable understanding of this that one makes fire offerings into the effulgent fire that is consciousness, the highest divinity, hungering for the aesthetic joy of devouring all things. Such a fire offering is in truth the dissolution of every experience without remainder, leaving only that radiance, that effulgent energy, tejas. In the same way, mantra repetition has the purpose of giving rise to that state of self-awareness consisting of the heart. This practice consists of cultivating within oneself the understanding that the ultimate reality exists as one's own essence nature, and that remains just as it is, fundamentally unaffected by the differentiated things that constitute the objects of consciousness, whether internal, external, or other. Disciplined observance is here understood as regarding the body and even objects in the physical world with the conviction that they are the same as the highest divinity. In order to attain an identification with the highest divinity that continues at all times and in all circumstances, without requiring any further practice to maintain it. As it is said in the sacred scripture called Nandi's Crest, quote, "The ultimate observance is seeing the equality of everything," unquote. Thus, though the ultimate reality that inheres within as one's essence nature exists independently of any concept, it may manifest through the various forms of understanding taught above, each being an aspect of the same pure wisdom. In this context, yoga is itself a particular form of understanding, consisting of an inquiry into the nature of that, in order to develop the pure totality of its constant and uniform experiential manifestation. In this system, the highest divinity has as its essence all-inclusive expanded awareness, and its power is this very inclusive wholeness, purnata, denoted by utterances in the scripture such as kula, the totality, samarthya, potency, urmi, the wave, hridaya, the heart, sara, the essence, spanda, the pulsation, vibhuti, pervasive power, trishika, the goddess of the three, Kali, the black one, Sankarshani, she who devours time, Chandi, the fierce one, Vani, the word, Bhoga, experience, Thirk, perception, and Nitya, the constant one. Each name denotes an activity of divine consciousness related to its meaning, such that she may be meditated upon in one or another of these aspects, and so become seated in the heart of each meditator. To be continued in part 2 of chapter 4.
Hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember, you can always find out more about the tradition of non-dual Shaiva Tantra at tantrailluminated.org, where, if you wish, you can become a subscriber to our online learning portal, and you'll receive access to a vast number of recordings, including a comprehensive curriculum in tantric philosophy, tantric yoga, guided meditation, and much, much more. Music for the podcast composed and recorded by Ann Leader. Find her at annleader.com. podcast produced by Grazia Tribulato. New episodes drop every week, and may all beings benefit.